what is personal growth? So there's this whole massive multi-billion-pound industry on personal growth. I've been a part of it professionally for the last 10 years and involved in it in a broader sense for about 20 since university on a psychology degree. Um, Here's the thing, nobody really knows. There's a lot of blagging going on here. Or if you're not from Britain, blagging's kind of making things up, basically bullshitting. And it's very difficult to pin down what that actually is, which means there's all kind of bullshit that's possible because no one really knows what they're talking about. That also means the whole personal growth field tends to be very insecure because it's not like, I don't know, being a 100 meters runner where you'd say, look, objectively, I can run it in this time and I'm the fifth best in the world or whatever it is, or, the best of my age or whatever. You can, it's very difficult to point to objective things like that, which leads to this insecurity, leads to a lot of people thinking they're kind of more spiritually, personally grown than they actually are, and other people and kind of overcompensating for this insecurity with big egos. Yeah, so you'll see that a lot. So what is it? If the channel's bad, I better have some idea. Well, I think the person who's given the best answer to this, having researched the field, is a guy called Ken Wilber, Wilber. He's considered the sort of Einstein of personal growth. He's surveyed a lot. He's personally done a lot of practice, and is really, a huge egghead in this field, one of the best theoreticians in the field. He maps it in something called the Equal map. Quadrants, lines. We talked about quadrants a little bit already, like subjective, objective. So that's in the background of a lot of these videos. He's talked about conservative and left in terms of like which the attribution of causation, which you both need for personal growth, whether it's attributing to cultures and systems, which is more of a left point of view, or the right point of view, more individual biology and choice. He's also talked about levels of development. So this is a really big one. So one way of looking at personal growth is to do it like what you call states. So yeah, I'm really, I've done a yoga class and I'm relaxed, I'm kind of high. Well, it's important, but it's not everything. A lot of people are confusing growing as people simply with getting high. You can go to a kind of hippie, lefty kind of personal growth dance thing and jump around, you'll feel really good, but it fades, right? It's not really any different from being drunk. So state, I think, isn't the key thing. Certainly state control, state regulation. We convey state through our unconscious non-verbal communication, what I'd call embodiment in there as well. So state matters, but stages, that's more permanent. That's the structures, if you will, of our consciousness. So what do I mean by that? Well, growing up, maturity. A child that says, you can't see me, is a very low stage of development. In terms of moral reasoning, people have mapped these. There's different what we call lines or intelligences that all have stages of development, so it's pretty complex. Look up something like spiral dynamics as a good place to start if you can't find Ken's work. So we grow through different stages of development. Traditionally, kind of a conservative, some conservatives often at kind of low stage development, which is purely like a tribal orientation, like, my group, right or wrong, my country. That's like what I call old conservatism. Yeah. And then coming out of that, we had a more logical kind of point of view, more looking at facts and reason and rationality. So we see this kind of conservative trend in this area in things like sort of business, scientific materialism, people that are kind of anti some of the more crazy orthodox religions from a lower level of development. Then we have the kind of postmodern sensitive stage, and this is the kind of disaster that this whole video series is trying to address. I mean, in one way it was good because it's like saying, sensitivity and no sexism and no racism, and that's a good thing, not taken in a ridiculous manner, right? I hope you guys acknowledge that and aren't just a bunch of Nazis watching this. So that sort of sensitive stage was very helpful, but the problem is now that that stage of development is coming into its fore, starting in the 60s, but now getting a bit more power, Obama perhaps being the first sort of green meme, or stage 6 it's called, president. I'm condensing a really big theory here. That's causing all kinds of problems, the whole political correctness thing, the way in which, specifically in my industry, personal growth has become hamstringed with this, so only certain values and points of view count. Yeah. So where do we get from that? Would be an integral point of view. This is reincorporating certain things, and particularly reincorporating certain things from a slightly more conservative point of view, but from a higher level of development simply than just, my country right or wrong, fuck everybody else. So that's what this channel is all about. Yeah, looking at development from that point of view. So personal growth is about growing through these stages over time. It takes time. They're not things you can shift easily, differently from stage. I also like to look at it in terms of skill acquisitions. This is a really pragmatic way of looking at it. The channel's called Pragmatic Personal Growth. So let's take there's different skills we could look at. I think emotional intelligence. This has been mapped by people like Daniel Goleman. We could look at emotional awareness, emotional regulation, emotional expression, social awareness, that's empathy, and social influence, things like charisma and impact. So they're all specific skill sets, and within any of those, we could break it down. So let's look at, I don't know, emotional awareness, how aware of different emotional range, different emotional stages are you as they happen in the body. Yeah, there's a body element to that. Regulation and expression, conservatives tend to be better at the regulation. The more left tends to be better at the expression, both useful skills. Yeah, toddlers tend to be better again at the neither. So actually no, better at the expression, so unconscious expression. Okay, so we can look at it as a skill set. How do I emotionally influence you? Can I make you laugh? Can I inspire you? Can I provoke you? Can I turn you on? There's specific skill sets we can look at within that. I like looking at skill sets because it's very practical, it's concrete, it's not like an abstract thing. If I'm teaching the embodied yoga class, one of the modalities I work with, for example, we can look at the specific skills. The same in meditation, rather than it just being something very abstract, we can say, okay, are you working with your concentration ability? Let's look at that as a specific skill. Here are some markers that may indicate development along that specific skill. Yeah. For example, I know, can you count to 10 on your breaths while meditating without losing track? That's something I didn't used to be able to do, and after a few months of meditation, I could. Yeah. Make sense? Okay, so we've looked at states, we've looked at stages, we've looked at lines of development, we've looked at quadrants a little bit. And if this doesn't make sense, don't worry. It's a big body of work. I'm rushing through it. Over the videos, this will all be fleshed out. I just kind of wanted to say, look, there is a map of personal growth that exists out there that's pretty thorough, pretty well researched as well, like the stages of development stuff. You can look at Keegan from Harvard or Suzanne Crick-Greuter. That stuff's been mapped and researched well. We haven't looked at types, but when we look at things like gender differences, we'll look at types. Personality differences, we'll look at types. That's the other part. So there's a bit of a map of personal growth, what it is. In terms of practical work for here, you might want to read some Wilbur. That's something I think, there's videos, but really get stuck into some of his books.